Welcome. How's everybody today? Welcome to Engage. Welcome, Mr. Kennedy. It's like all family getting back together. My mind is racing. I am like a kid in the candy store. It is such an honor for me today to have Mr. Ken Fowler here. I don't want to waste any time. I have had the privilege on a number of occasions of speaking with him and sitting under and asking questions for 2 hours straight. And it's frankly, it was a key point in my life, and it was kind of life-changing for my business. So can't tell you how excited I am. I was just downstairs speaking with him. If you are not familiar with Engage, it's just a bunch of like-minded people getting together that want to grow. We're not selling anything. We're just here to say, hey, we got to be authentic. We have to be real about the journey. We have our ups and downs every day. And hopefully you get something out of today that you can take into tomorrow and to next month to help you enjoy your journey to the fullest extent. And a big part of that is being vulnerable. It's about being real, and it's about understanding whether you're worth 100 million or 100 bucks. Everybody's got something to offer. Everybody's got something to say, and you never know when you're going to find a great idea. As a result of you folks supporting this regularly, we sell out every single time with very little effort, so thank you. And as a result of that, as you know, 100% of the proceeds goes to the local charity. I think we've raised close to $20,000. Mr. Fowler has asked that we support a couple of local charities today, so $1,000 will be going to 360 Kids, and $1,000 will be going to Evergreen Hospice. So, Mr. Fowler, thank you so much. Now, today, listen, folks, you want to get involved. No pun intended, but you want to get engaged. This gentleman is actually on that one over there, Ken, so I can, right there, so I can yell at you. Here's what a financial writer wrote about Mr. Fowler. Ken Fowler does not move financial markets like Warren Buffett, the fabled chairman of Berkshire Hathaway. He does not make headlines like Jerry Schwartz, the man behind the Onyx Corp., and he does not wine and dine celebrities on yachts like Jimmy Pattison, the sage behind the Jimmy Pattison Group. Yet when it comes to entrepreneurial savvy and reputation, Ken Fowler wouldn't be out of his league in the company of some of North America's most celebrated tycoons. That's an understatement. This gentleman's footprint is huge. I guarantee you every single person in this room has experienced the Ken Fowler entrepreneurial outreach. Fairmont Hot Springs Hotel. Fairmont Hot Springs, a BC 1,600-acre resort, 2 18-hole and 1 9-hole golf course, Canada's largest hot springs, 138 rooms, downhill ski facility, and a 320 RV park and substantial development lands. Red Leaves in Muskoka. Key Holdings, Marquet Homes. Marquet was a huge development in the U.S. We actually just talked about it downstairs. I can't wait to tell you about this one, but here's just a little food for thought. Mr. Fowler and his team invested $6 million and sold it for $400 million just before the U.S. market collapsed. I think he has a crystal ball. I'm looking forward to seeing where he keeps that. Jack Astor's Bar and Grill, Alice Fazouli's, Canyon Creek Chop House, Far Niente, Petite Four, Loose Moose, and Reds in downtown Toronto under his Sir Corp. Earl's Restaurant, Joey Tomatoes, Mediterranean Grill, West 49 Stores, and J. Michael Stores. Anybody here not been in a Ken Fowler restaurant or resort? When we started Engage, I said this to you folks. When I was a young salesman starting out, I always had the opportunity to meet with people that had done it much more successfully than I had, and they would speak into my life. And I was able to go to speakers and hear them. About 6 years ago, I was in the desert trying to reinvent myself, and I got the biggest compliment of my life. Elizabeth Langdale, my associate, said, "You remind me a lot of my old boss." I said, "Who's that?" She said, "Ken Fowler." Now, as you can see by what I just read off, I'm going to ride on that compliment for the rest of my life. I said, wow, he's in the restaurant business, and he's in the quarries, and he does real estate deals. It's kind of really weird. You're kind of like a mini Ken Fowler. I said, well, I looked him up on the internet, but I did something I encourage all of you to do on a regular basis. I picked up the phone. I said, "Mr. Fowler, I just got the biggest compliment of my life. My assistant Liz says that I remind her of you, and I would love to sit down and spend a couple hours of your time and just ask you some questions." Now, he's a busy guy, very busy. He drove up to Alice Fasulis on Highway 7 Western Road on April 23rd, 2010, and spent 2 hours with me from 1 to 3. He was on his way to a meeting at Red Leaves. 2 hours, and I was like a kid in a candy store asking every question under the sun. You're going to hear a lot of them today. Do you ever feel like a loser? Do you ever feel like a fraud? Do you ever borrow private money? What do you do when you're in this situation, that situation? I'm sure you were exhausted after the meeting, Mr. Fowler. I'm surprised you came back. You've submitted your questions. I've already had an incredible opportunity to speak with him. The less Harry James is involved today and the more we hear Ken Fowler's voice, trust me, the better it is going to be. I will do my best to make sure that you get maximum value. But can I ask you to do this for me? Here's a gentleman that's taken his time to come up and to give back. Can I give a warm Markham welcome to Mr. Ken Fowler?
Thank you.
Welcome, sir. How was that? I know you hate those kind of introductions.
Up here? I am. Yeah.
You hate those kind of introductions. Incredible. One of the things I said to him at lunch was, why don't you write a book? Like he should. I'd love to have a Ken Fowler book. Now, we just chatted downstairs, but here's something I always find fascinating. You don't come from money. St. Catharines, you're in a rough neighborhood. You dropped out of school or quit school at grade 10 so you could get a job. You started a paper route when you were a young guy. Sold it and made some money. I guess that was your first deal. Is that huge bucks?
I love telling that story. Actually, I bought a little route, and I started chasing other customers around the block. Then I traded customers with another guy who had some in my area for their area. In those days, St. Catharines Standard, the customer was worth $1 a customer. And so I grew it a long ways. And the favorite line I have is, when I sold it, I made I thought was a nice profit, my first capital gain.
Now, you started, I believe, as a real estate agent and then started your own brokerage. Is that right? How did you end up in a real estate business?
No, well, I started in the photography business first.
Okay.
In a little town of Mitchell, because I had learned the photography business. I quit school, terrible time. I quit school in grade 10. And I had to get to work. Tried to get a job in a factory. I went to Yale in town that made locks in St. Catharines, and because all my friends all worked in the factory, and I went in and tried to get a job as a apprentice tool maker, because I thought I had taken machine shop at school and all that stuff. Make a long story short, they hired me as office boy, which was kind of fun. And from there, I met somebody in that factory. I network a lot with people. Don't be afraid to keep talking to people. And through that networking, I met a gal whose husband was a photographer, and I always liked the idea of being in that business. And so I got a job in place in St. Catharines. From that, I ended up with a job in Toronto at Turovsky Brothers. Well, Turovsky Brothers, it was right where the BMO building is downtown Toronto, the tallest building in Toronto on King Street. And I was a photographer, and I can tell you many, many stories about that. From there, I met somebody who told me you could buy a photography studio in Mitchell, Ontario. And I said, well, if I could do that, and I didn't need a lot of money. My brother had just come back from the war, because that wasn't back in, the war was just over. And he had $2,000, and that was enough with somebody else I knew, a gal that I got to know, who loaned some money. Make a long story short, I met somebody there who said, why don't you start selling real estate? Nobody's doing it in this town. And in those days, you could get a license easy, and I did he was an insurance guy. And from there, I liked real estate, went to St. Catharines, sell real estate, got in the real estate business. And from there, got into the restaurant business because somebody said, you should see what this A&W is doing in Niagara Falls. It's opportunism a little bit. And so
organic, like you always had your intent. Because interesting about the photography thing, I mean, did you actually know anything about photography, or did you just think, well, that sounds like a good idea?
My dad had given me, he had it, the funny little box, and in those days, I'd go down into this old basement we had in this old house, turn out all the lights, and learn how to print stuff. It was face-to-face print, and I started to print photographs. And then I started taking them with a box camera. Just everybody had a box camera in those days. And that's all I knew about it. But I liked it because I thought I could do something. I always think I can be successful at what I do. I think too much so. That's a that's a
No, okay,
that's a
so there's a
challenge.
question though.
Yeah.
Where did that come from? I mean, you're down in St. Catharines. You don't come from money or privilege. You're probably not rubbing shoulders with people that are making those types of things happen. So where did that belief that you could actually make things happen and be successful come from?
I wouldn't have a clue.
Okay, it's all over. Thanks for coming today, folks.
I do believe that if anything, and most of us have it in us, I get excited, probably overexcited about something. I see an opportunity, and whether it's a kid, I can see that the newspaper. I can make some money there. It would be a good deal. I can do a better job than other people delivering papers, or I can, whatever I do.
Now, one of the things that I always find interesting is how does one go from selling a couple of houses in St. Catharines to having a 25-year vision for a multi-$100 million hotel in BC? Like, I'm assuming that type of growth is incremental. Like, you didn't sit back and say, one day I'm going to do this. Like, as you went through different businesses and different deals, did you kind of grow and expand each time? Or is it people you read, books you met? Like, how did that growth come about? Or how did that belief and conviction to take on a huge deal come about?
I think is making sure that you look for an attainable goal. You don't. I used to say to salesmen, became a broker, of course, a real estate broker. And I used to say to my salesman, because I started, and in St. Catharines there was these little tiny cottages out of Port Dalhousie that would sell in those days for like $1,500. So I'd say to the salesman, don't automatically think you're going to go and score big. You're going to find this big hotel or this big property to sell. Start where you're comfortable, where you can. There's more people. There's more opportunity. You can relate to it. You can understand it.
Right.
And so I think I soon learned that to put your energy into a place where you can get there. In other words, try to bring the challenge down to a point where you have the combination of resources, I guess, to get there. Because it takes an idea, it takes money, and it takes people. And in those days, the people part was yourself and people you gathered around you.
Now, was there any point, Ken, when you went through that real estate, people in business often talk about setting goals or having a vision or having a game plan or a 5-year plan, which business people at the banks are always big on, the MBAs, the nameless, faceless people in downtown Toronto that decide you and I's fate, even though they've never met us, those folks. That was an editorial comment, by the way, just in case you sensed any anger. But was there a point where you kind of cast this big vision, or was it just kind of like you got up every day? I know one of the things I read about you is the word entrepreneur wasn't even floated around when you started out. It was just kind of like you were out there doing deals.
It's a new name. I never heard of it before.
Yeah,
no,
but did you have a master plan, or you just kind of put your head down and just one thing led to another?
One thing led to another. In other words, you see an opportunity that, and you don't hit all the time. I was in Vancouver, and I was bridging from the photography business to real estate business. And that's when I finally decided to come back and get in the real estate business. Went to Vancouver, and I joined a company called General Films, and became a salesman for General Films. They were out of Regina in Vancouver. These are only months. I didn't last long at these things. But while I was there, what I saw was the very first Dairy Queen in Canada. Wow, that's how you get excited. You see something somewhere else, say, one of those would go so well. And I came back to St. Catharines, as well as getting in the real estate business as a salesman with another guy, then eventually as a broker. But I soon discovered that I was running faster than I could run financially, because for me, I didn't know enough about it. I couldn't rent. In those days, I thought, well, I got to buy a piece of land. I got to build a Dairy Queen. I mean, I stopped in on the way back. I know there was a company called Technocraft in Chicago who made the freezers. They weren't the Dairy Queen freezer. There was some other brand, but ice cream freezer, fast ice cream freezer, so I had it all organized, but I couldn't figure out how to raise the money. I didn't know enough about that type of thing. Eventually got in via a little A&W because I had a piece of real estate that I sold to another guy that I got into with a partnership on the real estate, for which was probably then the second or third A&W in Canada. And the guy, he had opened one in Niagara Falls, and he wanted one in St. Catharines, and I had this piece of land, and he said, "You should be in this business." Oh, so through him, I got the franchise for Kingston for A&W. From that grew what became Controlled Foods, which is a public company based in Vancouver eventually. I was partnership with Bus Fuller then. It was 1967. Bus Fuller's the Earls and Joey Tomatoes, and they own half of Cactus Club. And I was his partner up until about 6 years ago. And I sold out, when he sold out to his boys, I sold out, had a piece of it, nice piece of it. Because by that time it had become Earl's. We sold Control Foods to David Eisenstadt. Anybody ever heard of him? He's Keg Restaurants. And all interesting characters, all better than me. By the way, this is an important point that I must tell you. People say, what's your secret of success? And I always say, it's getting into business with people better than myself, at what they do, you know. I have a son now who runs Surcorp. That's our restaurant company that you just talked about, and he's way better at me than I couldn't do what he does.
As you can hear now, because my mind's racing. I'm thinking what the audience might be thinking. So Ken's a deal junkie. Okay, on his way up here today, he was still doing a deal in the back of his limo. As a matter of fact, I think Ken has a driver, so he can just constantly do more deals and not have to waste time driving. That's true. But you're involved in so many things. I'm wondering if one of the questions on the audience's mind might be, okay, you can't, you're like a squirrel. You see something worth $1 that you can buy for 20 cents, you can't let it go. But how in the world do you run multi-businesses in various fields successfully and have your finger on the pulse of what's going on so you don't get hammered? How do you do that?
You don't.
Excellent. Once again, we're done. Thank you.
Truthfully, I've been there, done it, and in hindsight, you get on a roll, and you can find too many deals. But I think I've told you, my favorite line is now, there's 3 parts to a deal. It's an idea, it's a concept, it's this restaurant, it's this building, it's that Uber business down the street, it's whatever. It's something that's happening. And you say, wow, what an opportunity. And the other 2 things you need is capital and people. And in my case, I think it's totally important. The most important of those 3 things are people. The worst thing you can have is a good idea and lots of money, because if you have, you can get killed if you haven't got the people to make it happen. And what I said earlier is true. I'm not very good at much of anything except I see opportunities. The important thing is to marry the money and the people to the idea. And the people better have a huge passion for what they're going to do, for that business particularly. In other words, if I go into business with one of you folks, the success of that business will depend to a total degree almost on you. I was telling earlier, we were talking about it earlier, that I was at a meeting on Monday of Surcorp, which is Peter's company that he's president of, and it's a restaurant company. And I sat at the board meeting. I said, all of these, and 5 maybe of the 4 or 5 of the senior executives were there. These are all high-paid people. But what I said was, and I mean it so sincerely, in the restaurant business, I've learned it. We can all sit up here and dream up ideas about this concept, this idea, But I said, you know, the most important person in this restaurant business is the manager.
It's clear to everybody in this room you're a great salesman. You've kind of gone through your life, identified these ideas, and gone out and marketed them, brought the people together. But here's a question that I have, and I know a lot of my associates in here feel the same way.
Oh, I'm losing it.
When
I'm losing it.
when you come up with an idea, and I wasn't that little rampage before about the banks, there's some sincerity in that, because I find that when you come up with an idea and you're very excited about it, the only time the banks want to jump on the bandwagon is when they see the solid success and you're popping the champagne. They're not necessarily willing to partner with you. Has private financing or getting like-minded people together been a big part of your journey of success, or how have you raised the capital for some of the amazing things that you've done?
The banks have come and gone. Right now, they're pretty well gone. In effect, and it's unfortunate, but to me, right today, the current banks that we have in Canada, the big banks, and that's all there is. It's all cash flow. If you haven't got cash flow, they don't have the confidence in you that sufficient to loan you money, and so you almost have to start looking around for the money in other places. If all the entrepreneurial sessions that I've been at, and historically they tell me, and I think it's true, it wasn't in my case because my family didn't have any, but it is usually a huge number of businesses because money comes out of the family for that first shot, that first little deal that you do. Then after that, it's friends because now they see your success or a modest amount of success, and then you get to lenders. And unfortunately today, and you're all experiencing it, I'm sure. The banks, their money's cheap, but they won't give it to you. They won't loan it to you, and the rest of the money is so expensive it scares you. It's high priced. They get their pound of flesh of scale. And so the unfortunate place right today, there isn't a nice balanced money relevant. I always say deals are somewhere between treasury bills and Las Vegas.
Ken, how do you overcome, because I know, again, and we've all gone through this, I know it's happened to a few of my friends out here. The banks make you feel like a two-bit loser. They make you feel like you're going to fail. They make you feel like, well, there's no way this will work. We're not going to underwrite it. There's way too much risk. You must hear that or have heard that over the years on a regular basis. What did you draw upon to get the strength to say, basically, screw you, banks, I'm going to make it happen with or without you? Where do you get that energy, that passion, that drive to kind of see it through without second-guessing yourself?
Well, they do put you down. They do try because they don't respect or have the confidence that you have in your dream. And that's why they're there, but they're not there. It's a whole different regime now. And it was better in my day than it is in your day. I will tell you that right now.
Yeah. We don't get to talk to anybody today. We can't talk to them. No.
And even then, I saw it happen. In those days, your local banker, he could make decisions. He was able to make decisions. Then all of a sudden, well, we're regionalizing it. And I could get to Hamilton and talk to the guy in Hamilton. And because my own manager, I was in the real estate business, and I would train the banker, so to speak. He would end up loaning me more money than probably than if he wasn't my kind of a banker, he wouldn't have. But I got to Hamilton, I was still able to talk to them. Then now they moved it. Now it's in Toronto, it's head office, it's a credit committee, and they won't let you talk to them. You cannot get to those people who make the decision. And so it's mechanized. So you do have to really find private sources, I think. And another challenge you'll have, and used to talk to kids coming out of high school, entrepreneurial classes, just for the fun of it. And the question so often was, well, I've got this wonderful idea, and I only need $20,000 or $5,000. Well, and they always felt they shouldn't have to give up more than 5% of their company for that $20,000. They soon learned they would be lucky if they didn't have to give up 80% of their company for the $20,000. But that's a negotiation that you do. Then you got to be convincing enough when you do your pro forma and believe it enough that you can sell it. And hopefully it is convincing enough that people like this guy or myself, other people like us, would step and say, wow, that's a good deal. Yeah.
Now, there's a cordless mic I have here. I have had the privilege of speaking to Mr. Fowler for hours. I don't want to dominate today. I'm sure you have a question on your mind. Don't miss this opportunity to ask the question. I'm going to open it up in a few moments. I have a couple of other quick questions, but this is your meeting. I'd like you to have a conversation with Mr. Fowler. And again, I asked him downstairs, I said, is there any questions off limits? None. You can ask anything. You don't even have to keep it clean. Is that right?
Well, oh, yeah.
All right, let's have some fun. In our journeys as human beings, we talk about this all the time. We have families. We have good days, bad days. Unfortunately, we have to attend funerals. We have stresses. There's stuff that goes on. It's part of being the human condition. And we often make the mistake. We look at somebody like yourself and say, oh, Mr. Fowler, hundreds of millions of dollars worth of deals. Also, he must have no issues. He must have not had that real low point in his life. I suspect you've been kicked in the head a few times. I suspect you've been down. What was your lowest point, Mr. Fowler, and how did you pull yourself out of it?
I thought the lowest point was 1982. Any of you folks been around long enough? In 82, it was 22.5% interest rates. And that was when the banks were loaning us money. In those days, the banks did loan you the money, but you got trapped. And we had a public company, Controlled Foods, and we were loaning the money. We were actually loaning the money to keep it alive at that time, keep it going. We survived. I had a fellow came in who had been running Electro-Home in one bank. It was the Mercantile Bank. They're long gone now. But they were one of my bankers. We had to put this guy in so they watching it for them, really. But he was a good guy, and he saved me from the banks at that time. But he said to me, you know, Ken, you'll do this again. In other words, you'll get yourself in trouble again, because I am a little too entrepreneurial. You can be too entrepreneurial sometimes. So the lowest point, which all you maybe know of and will remember, I was involved in, it was 2009. I got involved with a project that, a mix of things that didn't go the way we thought it was going to go. The cost overruns were ridiculous because the building period was wrong. We were a German bank that went broke in the end. A government, it was a part of Germany that owned the bank, the bank we were dealing with. And all the things lined up in the wrong way. And it was the Marriott Hotel up in Muskoka. You've all heard of
the Red Leaves Resort. Yeah.
The JW Marriott. Yeah. Well, Red Leaves, they happened. The funny thing is that the little company that owned the hotel, we owned all the rest of the land there as well. But the little company that owned the hotel also owned the name Red Leaves. Okay. And we may get it back someday. It's worth $1, but it's a nice name. We kind of liked it. But the fact remains, from 2000, and at my ridiculous old age, I'm still wrestling with challenges of scale. But we're survivors, and that's the key.
And that's why you look half your age, and you're here giving us advice, and you're still doing deals. I remember the day you met me at the restaurant. Again, speaking of character and the heart of Mr. Fowler in terms of giving back, he doesn't know me from a hole in the wall. He's driving up to Red Leaves in the middle of this vicious, I think it was vicious, negotiation. I know you had to fight real hard for yourself, but took 2 hours for a guy named Harry James on his way to the meeting. I mean, again, I can't thank you enough for that. It just speaks volumes about the type. But your guiding light, and I remember Liz telling me this, is always trying to do the right thing and always put things in perspective. Has that been something that's been kind of a
I think what drove that is, and I can't help it. I look out here at you folks, and every one of you, you're here for some reason because you're excited about something that you want to do, or you get excited about you'd like to do, or like to try to do. And I always figure I get something out of it. Like, I haven't got it yet, but I'm going to figure out a way of getting something out of Harry J.
That hurts. We've already spent an hour and a half together. I got nothing.
Yeah.
Okay, now let's open it up for some questions. Eric, you got the cordless mic. Who wants to ask Mr. Fowler a question? Over here, Jeremy.
Polly, we good? Polly?
Thanks very much, Harry. I guess what I was hoping you could do was expand a little more, because my question for Harry for today's Engage was exactly what he asked you, is finding a balance. As somebody who gets excited about the deals and sees all this stuff, I can't contain myself. It's like, where do I stop? But really, my problem is, where do I start? I pick one and get started with something. And I guess I was hoping you could just expand on that a little more. How do you sort of hone that energy, I guess is a good way to say it.
Now, hone it to tighten it, to focus.
To focus it, yeah, to make something come from it and not just
Maybe execute, like if you have a new idea, and let's say it's a business you don't know a lot about, how do you just kind of jump in and get it going and execute, instead of it just being an idea? A lot of ideas die on the vine.
You don't just, that is the point, you don't just jump in and execute it. It's a lot more work than that. You really have to put the energy and effort and time into making a success of it. If what Harry went through to have this space end up this way here, it isn't just happening. It's somebody had to take a lot more time. You told me that earlier today. He said, it takes a lot more time than you think to make something happen. And so I
was telling him how I was being tortured by the restaurant business. I was looking for free advice.
Yeah. And so to a degree, it sorts itself out, because you do start taking the energy and time for that project. And that way, and you have to pass by others. You know, you have to say over here, and you see there's a lot of smarter people than me who have, and I didn't do it well enough. I got too involved in too many deals, and then you don't do a good job. You lose them, you lose track, and pulse. And I do it just deal by deal. In some people's cases, they keep jumping. Another thing that you got to be careful of, I think, and I've watched other people do this, is don't keep trying to fix it. Keep changing it. You know, a new idea every day. Oh, I can do this. I can make it better. Develop it, and get your first iteration of that idea out, and work and stay with it. And don't be too quick to jump if you believed in it in the first place. In other words, don't come in and immediately change the menu because you thought you could see it too easy, and it was wrong to do that. In other words, without working it through a little more carefully, putting more time into focus on it. That it? Have I confused you? Tried not to.
When do you know it's time to walk away? When do you know it's time to kind of fold up the pup tent and say, this isn't working? Is there a set of criteria you use to figure that one out?
Well, all of these folks here, I'm sure the same as I am. We take too long getting there. We keep fighting it because we believe in it. That will happen. Common sense will eventually play. You can put way more money in, and it's tough. Because there's that old saying, don't keep throwing good money after bad. In other words, you'll know when you've spent as much time, as much work, and as much energy, and as much thought as you could, and it still isn't working. We don't. I've been involved in things. You know, I'll give you a funny story. I was in the restaurant business. I can't help it. But I was in New Orleans, and I was walking up Bourbon Street, and I saw a restaurant concept called Takey Outie. Oh, I thought, wow, neat. Fast food on the street, take out Chinese food. And I got so excited, came back to registered the name so fast in Canada. I was impressed with it. Came back. And Ron Joyce, by the way, who used to own Tim Hortons, he was down there at the same time, and I was kind of with him, and he laughed himself silly about that anyway. Long story short. But it came back, we opened up one, wrong location, wrong people running it, taking the idea, and probably a bad idea anyway. And in the end, well, I used to tell people, take you out, he became putty in. That's when you decided to close the door. Yeah, yeah.
Who's got the next question?
Sure.
Joe, take you outie, write that down.
Go get it.
Just as you've gone through all the businesses you've acquired over the years and run, when you're evaluating risk, how much is dependent on your gut feel as opposed to your lawyer's recommendations?
Oh, it's all gut. Unfortunately, it is all gut. And that is probably, people like me and maybe you folks too, you do need balance. Probably the best businesses I've been in, I've had a person in there who isn't quite as adventurous as entrepreneur, call the words you want to, as yourself. And so having that other person who has brings balance to it, where they don't get quite as excited about the idea as you do. And so I think it's very valuable to know your own weaknesses, I guess, or call it what it is, and bring in a partner if that's what you need. Nothing wrong with being like you are. And some of you may be this, but I'll say it anyway. And some of them are the best. But I have not a great relationship with accountants because they kind of hold me down. They slow me down a little bit. But in reality.
What about lawyers?
Well, in real estate, I used to always say businessmen make deals and lawyers and accountants screw it up. And, yeah.
Now, as a little follow-up, you said the word balance, and I know one of the audience questions was, what about work-life balance? That's kind of a buzz phrase today. A lot of people talk about work-life balance. Has that been something that you've consciously thought about in your journey, work-life balance?
I didn't do it enough. I didn't do it early enough. And I think that's a very huge challenge because most of us get so passionate and so driven, so excited about what we're doing, we don't keep balance in our life. And all of you folks are of an age, and most of you are anyway, that you can, there's lots of room to do that. Don't ever make whatever you're doing so important that you set aside other parts, the important parts, your home life, your personal life, your relationships that are driven by other factors than just being in business. And we can get on a roll, us guys, so I would recommend that you find balance. And I know a lot of people who have been hugely, way more successful than I am by a ton. And but they have, destroyed themselves. I was with, my wife was with me and some other folks. We were down in Bermuda, and I won't say who was there, but some Canadian who had left Canada because he made so much money, and he was trying to beat pay no more taxes in Canada. And when we walked out of his place and with that man, and we walked out, and I said, now you can see something, because he wasn't a happy person. And I said, you better make sure you own your money doesn't own you.
Yeah.
In other words, it's balance.
Yeah. You know, when I met you, and I've said this a number of times, I might have even said this to this audience, I don't believe in retirement. I hope I'm doing signing a deal the day I drop dead. That's really one of my goals. Write that down for me. But one of the things that really I know the audience finds inspiring, and I certainly do, is here you are, still doing deals, healthy and vital and engaged. What's been your secret? Have you got this? If I was to buy the paperback, is it diet? Is it philosophy? Is it exercise? Is it attitude? Is it a culmination of all those things?
I guess it's a combination. Some of the things I like to say is this, and I am trying to retire. My wife's sitting over there. She doesn't believe it. None of my family, they say he will never retire. I had a lawyer partner of mine once who said, when Ken's down in the coffin, buried down there, he looks aside, I wonder who owns these two plots next door. Make a long story short, I am trying to get out of what I do now, but I better have something that I want to get up for tomorrow morning. You should still always want to feel a little excited about something that you see. Otherwise, something, I think we're ready to go then. And I don't want to go quite yet. I see opportunities still.
Who's got the next question for Mr. Fowler?
I can't hear you. Is that working?
Need to make sure it's on.
Thanks. So in your businesses, have you taken any of your businesses into franchise models? Have you explored the success of the businesses that have been more corporate, maintained, and never moved into franchises? I know every time someone has a great idea, they're like, oh, you should franchise that. But then you start to really explore businesses like Starbucks, and you compare it to Tim Hortons or Subway, and they do present differently to their customers. So do you have anything to say about that?
I sure do. Start with, they're both formats that are very good. My son, who runs Surcorp, and we have a lot of restaurants. He's got a huge volume of business, a lot of you know. It's in the hundreds of millions of dollars, and he won't franchise those because they're like this restaurant here. They're full service, and there's a lot of complexities to them. And when you franchise, there's your ability to control the way they run, and he feels that it's not a suitable product for him. Franchising, that's how I started. We had an A&W franchise. I like franchising. It's a great format. It's important, though, that the concept is something that if you're going to do the franchising, you put a package together that you believe in. I gave a speech at a franchise organization once, and I was in the franchise business. We did also start one that didn't work. And this is the extreme case. We started a thing here in Toronto called Chicken Chicken. The guy had been with Pizza. Now, the Chicken, the trouble with it was that the people who they sold the franchise to and the control they had didn't work because it was the Swiss chalet type of chicken. And the trouble is, as you know, that stuff ages fast. It goes stale, it goes bad, dries out, and so on and so forth. And they didn't get it. And so their problem was they sold franchises to anybody who was a warm body with money. Keep that in mind. Whereas you really shouldn't sell a franchise if it wasn't of such a quality that you would sell it to your own sister who just lost her husband. In other words, you believe in it enough, and it stands up. Excuse me, my nose is running here. It would stand up to. You're proud of it, and it will work. And they don't always win, but it's because they're not good enough. My other favorite line is this. I mentioned this earlier. You can have McDonald's at Queen and Yonge, and if you got the wrong guy running it, he'll blow his brains out. And you can have not a very good restaurant and not a very good location and not branded, but if you got the right guy running it, he'll make a nice, modest success of it because he's concerned, he's passionate about it, and he works hard, all the ingredients. And so franchising is a great way. It's proven. It's a great way of distributing a concept and an idea. And if you don't do them fast enough sometimes, then everybody gets it. And so you've lost that edge. And so you want it to expand across. And with marketing and so on, and name branding is a huge thing, So.
A couple more questions, and then we're going to wrap things up so you guys can mingle with Mr. Fowler. Sherry? Yeah.
I was just wondering if you could share with us what's getting you excited right now. I mean, you're talking about retirement, but is there anything in the last few months that you could share with us that still gets that engine running?
Well, it's just being here talking to you folks. I like it. It's fun. It's It's rewarding, but away from here, now I am looking around. I've got next week. We've got somewhat involved. We have a charitable foundation that we've created, and there's the talk about franchising. This is an interesting thing. There's a thing in St. Catharines that a lady has started. She started now. Time flies, like 20 years ago, and it's called Start Me Up Niagara. And it's a homeless place where people gather. But this woman, she has made such a success of it. It's working because the way it operates. And we were there last night for a spaghetti dinner, which they do the once a month spaghetti dinner, the last one of the season. But they've got an idea that I think should be more across Canada, and the way they help all these homeless people. So I get excited. I'm not going to make any money out of that one for sure, but it's almost franchisable because it should be in other cities. I think it's different than a lot of the homeless shelters that are being run. Just the way they treat the people who come in. There's no, they're not religious. They're not this. They're not that. It's just well balanced place where people can come and get some help, so to speak. And other things. I don't know. I'm looking, and you're absolutely right. I am looking around. If I see an idea, and the right person, not going to be me anymore, not my age, but if I see somebody who's got a great idea, and they need money, but they are the people. It's not going to be me, and we don't have money either.
What kind of attitude is that? You're not going to retire. Of course, it can be you. One of the things, Sherry, that Mr. Fowler mentioned downstairs, because I asked him a similar question. He believes there's huge opportunities in the internet. He thinks that's he said if we were starting out over again, you'd be looking at.
If I understood, I don't. Yeah. I mean, to me, it's still a long ways to go. There's still huge opportunities. I did say as well some opportunities because of people like me, and you're getting up there, Guy, and it's well.
Well, this will be my last engage. Thank you very much for coming.
These senior citizens, there's a huge opportunity where they're living longer, they got money, and so offering opportunities for them to engage, live different lifestyles, share, participate. Who knows in what format as it happens. I just my wife and I are going down a couple weeks from now to Newfoundland. Well, I'm still. I drive and so on. I do what everybody else does, but I think there's a huge opportunity somewhere between maybe the bus trip that a bunch of old folks get on a bus and they're hauled around, and where you got to totally do it all yourself. Is there some balancing thing? So I saw one ad, some outfit down there, which was drive yourself, but they're guided holidays. Well, my wife and I were in New Zealand some time ago. We went on a package. It wasn't a package, but everything was booked. Our hotels were booked, but it was drive yourself, and so had been packaged by somebody in New Zealand for us. So who knows?
Takes a lot of the stress out of the travel, but you're still independent.
Yeah, still independent. Yeah. So, but many ways that a lot of these people delivering meals to houses. I got thinking the other day that little stores, the 1,000 square foot, but focused on you're starting to see it in the big supermarkets and Zehrs and so on, but where there's these meals that they're kind of putting together, but the big stores are doing it that's mass produced. But if there was a store that mostly where there's big apartment buildings, people go down and they pick up a quality meal, and the menu's changing. The prices are fair, maybe a little bit more than they charge at Loblaws or Zehrs or whatever you call these stores, and yet it's not junk, it's not totally processed, and so who knows? So stores anybody want to start one of those up? Let me know. I'd like to see what it's all about.
We got 35 business ideas. Very quickly, a lot of real estate folks in here. I've read so much about your real estate. One of the things that you've said that really resonates with me is about staying power in real estate. We have one of the hottest markets in I don't know how long. Can you just talk about your philosophy on staying power and how to ride through that?
Now, fundamentally, what I say about real estate is exactly what you just said. unless we're real stupid, unless we really buy wrong, really wrong, in the end, you will win if you have staying power. If you can have the money to hang in one way or another while the market changes. Unfortunately, again, we all look like heroes who've been in the real estate business over the years. But looking back from now, the thing that most of us have made our money on is inflation, whether we like it or not. It made you look like a hero quite often because it protected you from yourself when you bought something. The prices did go up. Don't get caught. Some of that stuff that I see in downtown Toronto, Vancouver, Calgary, and so on, that's scary. But
We had one more question, Eric, I think over here, yeah.
Thanks, Harry, for such a great lunch, beautiful food, great atmosphere, and Mr. Fowler, what a wonderful pleasure it is to listen to you. My question might be a little hard-hitting. I'm looking for you to share with us the 3 principles partners must meet for you to agree to partner with them.
do that again?
3 principles potential partners must meet to partner with you.
Three
principles, three things that somebody has to have in order to be your partner in a business.
Well, certainly, it's interesting, isn't it? Body language, I guess, when we first meet, you gotta feel comfortable. I always say early in the deal, I say, if we can't have fun doing it, I don't want to do it. And it has to be that way. History. I like to know the history of the person. It tells you a lot about their ability. But being passionate about what they believe in, and having the energy. It doesn't happen easy and fast, and you'll go through some very trying times, almost in every business, and you will do that. So the 3, let me say, passion, which passion and commitment kind of go side by side.
Chemistry.
Yeah, well, chemistry is that's your, I call it gut feel, but
Yeah.
but your ability to communicate with each other, openness, that's so important. And third, being able to convince their ability to convince you that they know what they're talking about, their ability to convince you, because that's what you're doing. I'm going into business with somebody, and so hopefully they can convince me through their excitement what that deal's all about. I probably missed, but there you go.
Yeah, contribute to the deal.
Yeah.
It's a great question. One of the things that I wish wasn't happening right now is I wish it wasn't 1:30. It's gone by so fast, but I do want to have the opportunity to have you mingle with Mr. Fowler and hang out and enjoy some coffee and dessert. I'm going to ask one final question, sir, and then we'll wrap it up. It's actually an audience question. All the people you've met, all the books you've read, all the experiences you've had, if you had to filter everything into one piece of advice for a successful life and a successful journey, if you had to tell your son or grandson today, what would that be?
Might sound funny words, but go for it.
Go for it. Yeah, I like that. This is an absolute true statement, not patronizing. Those of you that know me know I don't say these types of things unless I mean it. You're the same person a year from now, with the exception of the books you read and the people you meet. That's where true growth comes from. Being vulnerable, putting your ego on the shelf, and being authentic. When I had the privilege of meeting Mr. Fowler a number of years back, sir, you literally changed my life. You did. 2 hours, and the advice you gave me in my business is the reason I'm doing a lot of things that I'm doing today. And from the bottom of my heart, I want to thank you for taking that time, sir. Thank you for coming out and sharing with all these folks here today. I hope you had a good time sharing all your information. I hope you enjoyed your lunch. Everybody here, have a good time? engaged. Let's hear one more huge round of applause for Mr. Ken Fowler and his family for coming up to celebrate.
None.
Thank you so much, sir.
Enjoyed it, Harry, very much. Very
you so much.
special.
I really
Thank you.
appreciate it.